see the finger. All right. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to our our County Office of Education Environmental Literacy Community of Practice. So this is our November meeting, and we're so excited for you all to be here today, and happy November. So we're actually flipping this meeting. Normally we've done the breakouts and discussions in the beginning of our meetings and then did the topic and focus areas in the second part. So we flipped it today. And so we're really in the first hour going to talk about, capacity building and how we could, using some, professional learning and knowledge to action work in the environmental literacy space that you may all be doing in your county offices, or some ideas to build that capacity. And then we'll have you do some GOTS and needs for that. And then in the second hour, we'll be focused on, discussing that topic, if that's a choice for you to do. Or we're going to also provide two other opportunities for breakout sessions to either one, talk about AB 285, which might be on some of your folks' radars. Definitely got on ours earlier last month. And then the discussion of the Cal MSCS and maybe how our folks in the environmental literacy space can be part of that dialogue of that statewide grant. So next slide, please. So welcome. I hope you're all doing great. As always, we want to make sure we're acknowledging our Indigenous partners in the areas that we're in. So it is making sure if you want to acknowledge your partnership, if you want to do that in the chat. But I also came across some great resources for sharing with your colleagues and folks that you work with. And of course, Native American Heritage Month is this month, but we should be acknowledging and connecting with our Indigenous partners always. But two local-ish activities are, there is going to be one of our Indigenous tribes that we've worked with in Santa Cruz and Santa Clara County is the Amamlitsin, and there is an event happening on November 18th. It's also virtual and live on YouTube, so if you're interested in joining in that, and it's called Indigenous Voices and Reclaiming and Restoring Truth. And Amity and I have both had conversations and worked with their director of the Amamlitsin, a tribal chairperson, Valentin Lopez, and he's amazing. If you ever, I think we've shared videos of him before, and he's great if you want to listen in. The Braiding Sweetgrass event is actually a recorded event. Robin Wall Kimmerer was here about a year ago in the Bay Area, and it's sponsored by Post, but they are keeping this up until December 2nd. So if there's interest in hearing from her, if you've read the book, an amazing book, I highly recommend it. And then on the left side of the slide is a link to the Secretary Speaker Series on Native Voices. And the next one is coming up next Tuesday. So there's a link there also to resources. And then if you're not familiar with the Zinn Education Project, they also have some great educational resources on rethinking Thanksgiving and Native American resources. So just a good link to have. So I wanted to acknowledge that. So our objectives, I'll read this so some of you are auditory listeners, auditory learners. So we're sharing our resources and innovative practices. Our community of practice intends to build the capacity of county offices of education to serve as a regional backbone support for the following outcomes in each county. So we want to support access to regular and ongoing environmental and outdoor learning experiences for students by working with school districts, teachers, and community-based partners. And this work centers on supporting those from the most vulnerable and marginalized communities. We also we want to support the development of district-wide plans that include experiences for students at all grade levels with an emphasis on low-income students and students of color. We want to apply frameworks that integrate environmental literacy and sustainability into the curriculum, campus, community, and culture, and infuse sustainability principles and practices into County Office of Education core operations. So we're always excited. There's more of you joining us every month. And so our end goal is to have at least representation from all county offices of ed. And I believe there's 58 of them. So we're getting closer to that. It's pretty exciting. The next slide, please. So quick connector, you can answer one of these two questions. What do you like the best or least about the change in time or daylight, falling back with our clocks last weekend? Or is there something that you like to plant early in the fall? So answer one of those two questions in the chat, and I'll just verbalize mine. I like best about the time change is when I get up early in the morning, it's not dark. When I take the dog for a walk, it's starting to get light out already. But I really have a hard time at the evening when it's getting dark at 5 o'clock. Feels like you can't really get anything else done. So go ahead and share in the chat an answer to either one of those. I do not like less daylight at all. Yes. Planning to, the wildflowers, great. Thank you. Yes, the before work, having that extra 2 hours of daylight. Yeah, it's really good. Morning daylight. Yep. Time to plant California natives. Yep. Gooseberries. Ooh. Yeah, right? I agree, Leslie. The shutting down of the brain an hour early. And the kiddos adjusting. Yeah. And our pets have to adjust too, right? I don't know if you all have animals that have to eat at a certain time. They ask to go have dinner earlier. Driving to work at 6 a.m. Yeah, morning daylight. Yeah, oh, that's a good way to think of it, Rob, is settling into the evening earlier and leaving the day behind. I know. I wish they would not do the time change anymore. I know. Morning people. Early sunrise, sunshine in the morning. These are great. I do like that too, Letty, about the change of the crispness in the air. Hot cocoa and hot. Oh yeah, okay. There's some good things about winter. Driving home in the dark, yeah, that's tough. An early morning sun from Danielle waking you up. Yeah, awesome. And the pets, oh my gosh, yeah. All right, so thank you so much for sharing that. So glad we got to connect that way, and I love all the reactions in there. And we're just going to get into the protein, as we're calling it today, the meat. If we don't want to call it meat, we're vegetarian, we're protein focused. And we're going to be doing some capacity building at scale, talking about ingredients for excellent knowledge to action professional learning. And I'm going to pass it on to Amity Sandage and Stephanie Simon to present this next part.
I can continue with the slides. Stephanie, if you want to kick us off.
Great. Yes. Good morning, everyone. It is really nice to be here and nice to see all of you. Some of you I have met in person, and others of you I worked with last year. But I'm Stephanie Seidman. I'm the program director at Undaunted K-12. But the reason why I'm here presenting with Amity today is because I was lucky enough to be able to work last year with 10 Strands, and specifically with the County Office of Education Fellowship Program that Amy, Andra, and Amity were running and are continuing to run. When I was in grad school doing a program evaluation for that program. So I got to work really closely with them and with some of you, many of you, and learn so much about this incredible program that has all of these key ingredients that Andra, Amity, and Amy have all been using throughout the programs that they've been running. And so we're going to talk today about these key ingredients, what these key ingredients are for excellent knowledge to action professional learning programs. And if you're in the COE fellowship, or if you've participated in any of the programs that these three amazing leaders have run, you will see like all of these things will be very familiar, and you're going to kind of get to see how the sausage is made. So Amity and I are excited to share this with you today.
Yeah, and I'll just add that Andra was going to be here and then had something come up that could not be moved, and so we're missing her today, but you will feel her presence through the amazing resources that she has pulled together. She's so good at making things work so we can put them into the system and work towards systemic change. And this was also a session we led at NAAE, so it's kind of like a webinar format. So it's going to be a chunk of time where we're talking a fair amount at you, which I apologize for in advance, but we'll try to have some pauses for you to reflect and share your own ways that you are probably already using some of these key ingredients, and just want to let you know that we'll have the breakout time after and try and get through this presentation first. And you
Great.
already, yeah.
Yeah,
So
we already
yeah,
kind of-
Stephanie just introduced herself. You all knew me as the Environmental Literacy Coordinator at Santa Cruz County Office of Education. You might not know that I served as the regional coordinator for the Creek Network in my region for many years prior to being full-time here at the COE. And I also spent a lot of time in the non-formal education sector in the museum world. And so I love thinking about different audiences and different scales of this work in the education system across formal and non-formal.
Okay, so we want to kind of start with an acknowledgement of the importance of scaling environmental literacy programming, which all of you probably already are very bought into this idea that scale matters, because you're here at the COE Innovation Hub. The climate emergency is urgent, as I'm sure you know, and we need environmental literacy not just to reach students and young people, but we need environmental literacy education to reach leaders who have the authority to bring about systems-wide change. Too often, adults put the burden of environmental education and solving, the climate crisis. We put that burden on the next generation, when in fact, we actually need to be building capacity with adults who can help make change now, not just in 12 grades once everyone is graduated and, entering the workforce. We need change to happen now. This emergency is urgent and requires all hands on deck. And so this crisis, again, demands intergenerational action. Yes, we need to make sure that children and young people are educated so that they can, they know about the contributions that they can make, and so that they feel hopeful as well. But we also need adults to act, especially when adults currently right now are sitting in positions of authority and power where they have agency to bring about change now. So again, the urgency of this crisis requires an intergenerational response. It's all hands on deck. And for that reason, scaling up our programming to include not just young people, but teachers and school leaders and district leaders and county leaders and state leaders. This matters because it's how we make sure that this this kind of education can be brought to everyone. Great. So again, today we're going to share the essential elements of this transformative professional development that works at all scales. And again, I think these ingredients are going to feel familiar to many, if not all of you. Okay, so we have a Jamboard just because, as Amity mentioned, it is kind of a lot of us talking, but we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to reflect. So I just put the Jamboard link in the chat. The slides of the Jamboard correspond to our slides. So as we move through the slides, we'll try and remind ourselves to pause and give you time to reflect, but the slides correspond to how we're moving. The Jamboard slides correspond to how we're moving in our slides.
So I can take it from here for a little bit. I want to start off by just saying I'm sure you see these components on the right in the colored bars that are what has come out of a lot of experience running a lot of different programs over the years between Andra and me and our colleagues in COEs that some of you are here. And we've been running programs in different counties, running them together sometimes, and also individually. And we've had programs that have been focused on site level and district level administrators that we've run together, the regional fellowship there. We've also had our separate teacher fellowship programs. and we've also run separate youth programs. And we've found that throughout our experiences, these same components come up again and again, and have found that this model really works across programs, across audiences, when it includes all of these elements: learning and skill building, coaching, action-based projects or plans, accountability and reflection, and a cohort or network. And I'm just going to drop a document in the chat that Andra pulled together that gives a lot of background and links to examples of all those different kinds of programs that you see outlined on the slide. So you can get some of the actual tools that she had used in those programs. Those are all related to her work. And Julie, who's here today, continues that teacher fellowship in San Mateo County, so she can speak a lot to that when we do our breakouts as well. So from there, I'm going to move on to talking about the impact that's happened in terms of scaling. So Andra started by counting up just her programs and had this slide with like 400 and something catalyzers trained, and then I was like, oh, I should have mine too. And then we're like, oh my god, we're almost to 1,000 people, just the two of us, through these programs over the past like 7 or 8 years, training leaders at all different scales to be doing this exciting work of environmental action in schools. And where we've landed is a general strategy that's a program that extends over an extended length of time, like between a semester and a year-long program, with a select audience, so a cohort-based model where the folks participating all have that in common. And the experience includes a retreat, workshops for learning and skill building, and also some coaching and action planning. And then we have some asynchronous learning tasks sprinkled over time. And we also connect in community-based partners to build networks for the participants, not only with their peers, but also beyond the schools out in the community. And the final important element is accountability and reflection. And to give you a snapshot of the impact from a real example, I'd say our Teacher Leadership Institute in Santa Cruz is the foundation for us scaling this work across our county. And over the course of 4+ years, we've used this model to build the capacity of teacher leaders who were strategically chosen to represent school sites across our county. So in the end, our cohort of nearly 200 teachers represents about 90% of our school sites. And every component of the PD model that we're talking about has been essential to the success of that program. The depth of learning and commitment created really grew champions who are able to carry their knowledge and commitment back into the system, so I don't have to be the only one doing it. And some of the results that have come out of that is that they've done peer training for teachers back at sites. We counted that up, and altogether those 200 teachers reached 10,000 students engaging in outdoor learning experiences and environmental literacy education during their core instruction. And that's like, we only have 40,000 students, so that's a significant impact. And then we've also seen the creation of district level environmental literacy or green schools committees at multiple districts, and invariably those committees are populated by alumni of these learning programs. 2 of our districts have written environmental literacy into their LCAP primary goals, and 6 others have significant initiatives incorporating outdoor learning and environmental literacy. And again, the teacher leaders from the Institute are often leading these initiatives and mentoring teachers and teams. And 3 teacher leaders that were in the Teacher Institute are now principals in the districts and are reaching out to help to get support to take this work to the next level in their new role. So I'll plop the site for that into the chat. I'm not as good as Andra at turning everything into something everyone else can use, but you're always welcome to contact me with any questions. So on to, I talked through these like elements. I should have changed the slide of what we include. So I just went over that. And we're just going to talk through those key components. So this learning and skill building, last year we launched a new version of our Teacher Leadership Institute that goes beyond science to all content areas. And so just in this first 2 years, we've had teachers representing every grade level, TK through 12, and the teachers' content area focuses have included science, math, English, history, health, art, English language development, and career technical education. And from the start, we've also included the environmental education partners as full participants alongside the teachers. And so with this incredibly diverse group, this first component of the PD model, learning and skill building, became even more important than ever. Our work has always been based on research on how people learn, call it the learning cycle or the 5E framework. But an essential part is starting off every cohort with a shared learning experience. So not just their teacher hat, but their learner hat, allowing everyone to develop common understanding and language to be able to draw from as the work becomes more complex. And it's also essential because educators coming to this topic often come with a very wide range of prior knowledge and experience. A lot of them come because they care very deeply about the planet and the environment, but they haven't necessarily been supported to have a lot of adult learning opportunities for themselves. So including this foundational shared learning and skill building component is essential, and it also models how we should be doing this with students. We all know that effective teaching grounds all the students in a shared learning experience for equity. So you're not assuming prior knowledge, giving everybody an experience together to make sense of and co-create their new understanding. Some of the examples of ways the learning and skill building happen, like during our kickoff retreat, we build a shared understanding of the current environmental crisis through exploring local county data on climate and environmental justice impacts through Cal EnviroScreen, and also model trauma-informed practices to process the emotions around that. And that really builds a shared sense of urgency for the group and serves as a touchstone that really helps everyone stay together and find the bandwidth to do this work because it's so important. For topical learning, we engage in activities to examine the frameworks for this work, like the California Environmental Principles and Concepts, and model ways to take that onto a campus and think about the overlaps between campus curriculum and community with the environment as context. To support core skill building, we've tried to provide tools and experiences that grow essential tools or skills like outdoor teaching skills that teachers might not get through their other programs, and reflect together on what worked for them as learners and how they can adapt that skill to build for their student audiences too. And lastly, I just want to point out that this learning and skill building component is definitely foundational, like I was saying at the start, to get everybody that shared experience, but of course it continues throughout. And so you can break it up to support progress toward their final plan or project. And it definitely overlaps with some of the other components like coaching. And that's the next one we're going to talk about. But before then, I just wanted to give people a moment to just think for 30 seconds, maybe take your eyes off the screen, about what you do for learning and skill building, what you heard, and capture anything in that Jamboard that you want to. We'll just pause for a minute.
And we're on slide 2 of the Jamboard, learning and skill building.
Great. And I'll just leave that up for a sec.
Thank you to those of you who are using the Jamboard. It's just a helpful space to, if you want to, it's a helpful space to reflect. And then we have a documentation of how everyone's thinking about it. So I'm going to move on to coaching. Coaching is another kind of foundational ingredient or element of a successful capacity building program that can be scaled. Ongoing coaching provides tailored support for participants in between workshops or as they're working on an action plan or a project. And this is so important because often in a virtual program, it sometimes can be easy to not really know how your participants are doing. So having that one-on-one, those one-on-one opportunities to really touch base and support people gives you a better sense as a facilitator of how people are doing, and to kind of nudge or guide them along gently in a safe space for them to allow them time for individual processing. If you're working with principals or district leaders, as you know, your participants, they're going to be extremely busy, and this professional learning that the program that you're running might not be the most important and urgent thing on their agenda. And so having this time for coaching just really allows you to have that focus time to check in and make sure that they're, you know, reflecting and able to participate. And so it's just, this coaching is just such an important piece of the model. And then coaching is just important for, again, like accountability, deeper reflection, deeper processing. But it's also, it can be hard as a facilitator, it can be hard to kind of find coaches for your program. But because it's such an important element, we just really encourage you to be kind of creative about who could be a coach. So often I know in Andra's programs, she'll have like previous participants come back and be coaches. So some of you might even be doing that for the County Office of Education Fellowship right now. You might have been a participant and now you're coming back as a coach. Sometimes, so Andra and I are running a youth program right now for youth policy. And our coaches, we partnered with the Sierra Club, and our coaches are actually Sierra Club volunteers from across the state. So that's great. They are able to kind of tap in and support students one-on-one, so that we're not like, that's not kind of digging into our bandwidth, because again, coaching is kind of, yes, it's foundational and it's so important, but it is a big lift. So we just encourage you to be kind of creative with how you can build that capacity without draining your own bandwidth. And of course, peer coaches. Thank you, Mara, for bringing this up. Peer coaches can certainly deepen the learning. Again, from a prior cohort, or even in a new cohort, you could have a system for peer coaching that supports accountability, deeper reflection, and some of that processing that folks just really need in a program that can sometimes feel like a fire hose.
Yeah, I can just add, it can be it's been very flexible in the various programs that we've run, like from once a month to every 3 months to, you know, having like a single touchstone. I mean, not that that's the only coaching they get in the program, but there might be one, like for example, in our Teacher Leadership Institute, there's a session that's devoted to having the EE partners serve as coaches for teachers who are integrating outdoor learning into their classroom curriculum. And so those environmental education providers can be coaches on that piece where they have expertise. And on a different day, I invite our content area coordinators from my C&I department. Heather just came the other day for science and put them all into breakouts with teachers to talk about history integration and math integration and science and ELD. And so you can also, the coaches can be called in like for a very limited amount too, sometimes for a specific piece.
Thanks, Amity. All right, so we're in slide 3 on the Jamboard. If you want to take a moment to reflect, what are some questions, examples, or thoughts that you want to share about coaching and how coaching is an essential ingredient for a successful capacity building program?
And please use that Jamboard to brag about your successful elements that we're talking about. Like if you have a program where you're doing this piece really well, capture it in the Jamboard so we'll be able to talk about that in the breakout rooms. All right, I'm going to start moving on to our next component, which is the action-based project or plan. This is really the heart of what people are working toward in the program to apply their learning of what they're learning in the program. So if they're youth, they're maybe working on a stewardship campaign or an advocacy campaign as their action. Teachers might be developing units of study or lesson sequences and implementing them with their students. Admin might be creating a project to help green their facilities or use the campus more as a lab for learning. And a COE might be working on a more robust environmental initiative at their COE, a plan for an initiative that they've identified. So each program has some level of action-based project or plan that pushes them into the action from knowledge to action. So hence the knowledge to action program. And I think it's important to note that these products are really not about creating a product for others to use. They're throughout the process of creating it, the participants are being asked to apply their learning and really take ownership over the work. And that's the thing they're getting out of this. That project or plan is really for their own use. But then if you structure it well, we've discovered you can really get the added benefit of then having captured these stories of impacts and real life examples that then can be used to inspire the incoming cohorts. So both Andra and I started out with a lot of lesson planning with our teachers, and then we realized, that's great, but let's have them also have the final product that's actually outward facing be more of a case study of their journey, of their vision for their classroom, and include elements of their lesson plans, but nothing that someone else is going to be able to turn around and use, because we all know how hard it is for a teacher to develop something that another teacher could just take and use. We don't even do that with our own materials. We're always changing them the next round. So that would be our advice about this piece. And we've got tons of examples. Andra's got examples linked in her that document I shared at the beginning of her change makers, both youth, admin, and teacher level change makers. And then you can also see examples from my program with the green classroom profiles for the Teacher Leadership Institute for Sustainability, and then the sort of lesson sequence overview documents from our Science Institute. Did you want to add anything, Stephanie, about this before we
just one
go
quick
to the
thing.
Jamboard?
One quick thing on the action-based project or plan is that it can be really overwhelming for folks participating in a learning program to also have be responsible for creating a master plan for their district, for example. However, what we found to work really well is chunking it out so that at each topical workshop might correspond to a piece of the plan that they're doing. So they're coming to a workshop, they're learning some of the core foundational knowledge and skills, and then they're putting those skills into action that month, working on a part of their plan. And so then it kind of helps you chunk out the plan so that by the end, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I finished this whole entire master plan process that would have taken me, so much time had I just done it only at the end. So try not to save it for the end. Try and make it a continuous part of the program. And that's something that the coaching can really help with, is each month, debriefing the topical workshops and then working collaboratively on the plan together. And I think Amity might have mentioned this, but it's important just to consider it's not just a plan or a project for a plan or project's sake. It's something that's going to be really useful. So think about what might make sense for your audience. A principal might want to do a school-wide plan. A student might want to write a school board resolution. It's going to be different for every audience. So really just thinking about what's the right output for your audience to be working on.
Thanks. So this is a good moment then for the next frame in the Jamboard.
Yeah.
Take a moment to think about ways that you maybe have guided people toward action projects in your professional learning. or what's coming up for you about if you haven't had this be an element of your programs. It's fun. I'm seeing less activity on the Jamboard this time. I think people are looking at examples probably of the change makers and stuff, which is great. And you can see those templates are so useful, having a structure for people to plug into. And like Stephanie said, working on it chunk by chunk. We've actually found we have like a messy version. That's the sandbox that they work in for their planning. And then we give them like a template where a lot of what they put in that messy planning version, the questions in the final template, that's going to be the outward facing case study or profile, should be easy to fill in with what they did in that messy version. That's been a really great strategy that's evolved over time.
Yeah.
And then they can celebrate that beautiful version at the end and share it with others, but still have all of their complex thoughts back in the older document.
All right, should we move on to accountability and reflection?
Yes.
Great. So again, in a 6 to 9 month program, it can be challenging to keep people really engaged. And so having measures and considerations for accountability and reflection and building that into the fabric of the program is really important. Accountability increases participation and stamina, while reflection can support learners in really deepening their growth over time and really seeing that growth as well. And so there are lots of different ways that Amity and Andra and Amy and others have built accountability and reflection into their programs. Sometimes that can look like, again, coaching is like a part of accountability. And even something like a stipend can be part of accountability. You know, when you finish the program, you or your district can get some kind of a stipend. That is actually a really important and helpful form of accountability. And then reflection is also very much built into the fabric of the program through usually case study reflection. So if you've participated in any of Andra's programs, she loves doing the case study reflections at the end. Those can actually be like presentations, like people for the COE fellowship, you know, we've talked about like, oh, maybe the reflection piece can be like a presentation to your county superintendent or something like that. So lots of different ways and methods to further reflection, but it's so helpful to have people reflect on how far they've come. It just makes people appreciate their learning even more, be aware of their growth and learning even more, and then helps you share that with others. The youth policy program that we're running right now, the case study reflection is actually full of brilliant nuggets from young people talking about what it's meant to them to present to their school board and all of the leadership skills they've developed. And that we're going to just like copy and paste those right into a press release so that people can hopefully write a news story about the impact of this program. So the reflection is great for learners, and then it also just gives you this really amazing repository of the success of your program, and that can help you then be an advocate for making sure that this program can continue on. So maybe you're sharing some of those reflections and impact with you know, your superintendents and your supervisors. So all in all, it's kind of a win-win, really helpful for the participants and really helpful for you as the facilitators to have that evidence of learning and growth.
Great. So I don't really have anything to add there. You covered it beautifully. If people want to take a moment to think about this piece, accountability and reflection, and any takeaways, go ahead and capture those however you want to capture them, whether it's the Jamboard or your own notes or the chat. All right. I'm going to go on to the last component that we identified in these programs, is the having a cohort model and network. And this is all about peer-to-peer learning and peer networks that encourage everybody to get deeper and engage together and share their learning. We always talk about how everybody who's coming in has something to teach and something to learn, like no matter where you are in your journey. And that goes with the youth programs too. Every single person involved, from facilitator to participant, whatever age, is a learner and a teacher. And it's just a chance for folks to share their own experiences and learn from each other. Youth get to learn about different schools and communities through these programs where you bring them together. Teachers get to network with each other in ways that they never get space to back at school, or in my case, across districts, and connect with others beyond their school sites or beyond their districts. And these programs really build relationships. And if you can maintain some kind of alumni network and have your community-based partners involved from the start as full participants alongside teachers, that's been incredibly valuable for my program. But I know Andres have had the community-based partners come in for sections of the program. That works as well. But those, I get evidence all the time of these relationships that have carried forward beyond the institute, and have heard about projects ongoing with groups that have gotten connected because of having this cohort that you're going through this shared experience with. And another thing to think about is how you can use your cohort. You think of your cohort coming in as all having this one thing in common. They're all teachers, or they're, there's usually a key characteristic, but they have other elements of their identities that you can reconfigure them into networking groups, which has been really effective. So we'll have some sessions where people are brought together around grade levels groups instead of mixed, or by district groups, or by the project focus that they have together on their action projects. And so those kinds of networking opportunities are also great to explore and see how you can build capacity in these different areas by reshuffling the networking opportunities. And again, bringing back the previous participants into the network whenever possible to inspire and be thought partners is just amazing to see how that adds to the program so much. And yeah, I think those were the main points I wanted to make. Stephanie, did you have others you wanted to add?
I think just one last piece of this network is that so often in this work, these fellowships or these learning programs can sometimes be the very first of their kind. And so the participants are these like early innovators, early adopters. And that can often feel isolating for those folks until they come together in these learning spaces and realize, oh my gosh, no, I'm not alone in, San Mateo County. There's so many other people across the state who are doing some of this work. And so it's kind of a comfort in a way, and so really being able to spend time in the program, building those connections and building that network out is just going to pay dividends later on as people really see the work that's happening and are motivated by each other. So it's just such an important part of the program, and it's important to build time and space into the learning to make sure that people can build these deeper relationships and connections.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Stephanie, because yes, that's the youth leaders that always come in saying like, oh, I thought I was the only one that cared. Like, they're so excited to meet other youth that care as much as they do from all across the county. It's so inspiring. And the teachers too. I was so shocked during the crisis of COVID and last year's flooding, like, our teachers just kept coming because they're like, this is what feeds us. Like, we're with these other peers who have are such professionals that they feel such connection to, and then being able to share what's going on with the teachers, with the youth. The youth are so excited to hear that teachers care too. So you can do some cross network like storytelling as well, which can be very inspiring. So I've shared artifacts from the Teacher Institute with students, and they're like, wow, the teachers are as worried about climate change as we are. And that is wonderful for them to know. So that's the last element here. You can take a moment to reflect on that, and then Stephanie's gonna sort of sum up.
Okay, so again, here's just these 5 essential ingredients: learning and skill building, coaching, action-based project or plan, accountability and reflection, and the cohort and network. Again, these might feel really familiar to you if you've participated in any of these programs. A couple of other considerations as you're thinking about these essential ingredients: how you want to do outreach and publicity, how you might want to lean on existing networks that you have or previous participants to really get the word out about your new capacity building program that you're launching. A second consideration would be, again, as I mentioned before, these innovators and early adopters versus the late majority. The learning might be different if you're working with a group who has been internally motivated and working on these issues for a long time alone, versus if people are brand new because they're maybe in the late majority, and so they're brand new to learning about climate change or learning about environmental literacy. You know, the learning might look different. So it's just important to kind of really consider your audience in that way. Of course, diversity and representation from across the state and across different types of schools and districts and counties is really important, just to make sure that you have a diverse and representative program across your county or across districts in your county, for example. And then how you might organize the learning itself. This kind of gets into the weeds, but you know, do people have Google Drive in their work emails? And is that something that is that going to be an appropriate conduit for keeping track of all the learning? Or is Canvas a better option? You know, thinking through about the LMS and how you're really going to kind of organize the learning. And then finally, which opportunities which of the kind of learning opportunities are really important to have in person versus which are maybe better virtual. For teachers, for example, you know, during summer break, I know for Julie's program, like during summer break, it's such a great time to have in-person opportunities. And for the retreat versus the topical workshops, it makes sense when after a long school day, if you can't do an in-service after a long school day, you know, you just want to be virtual. So just important to kind of consider what might be best for your audience. If your county is huge and enormous and it might take a lot of resources to get folks together in one room versus maybe you're working with one small district and it can be easy to get people together. So just that consideration. And then finally, I think maybe we could have even started with this slide, which is that this model works. And we've been able to see that from the formal program evaluation that I did last year that brought me to this work with Amity, Amy, and Andra. But you can also see it in so much of the evidence from the youth program, the administrator fellowship, the environmental solutionary teachers fellowship program. Amity, I don't know if you want to speak to some of the specific numbers that you know of, but
yeah, it's there's just, both of us have found numbers like, you know, in the 90s in terms of people feeling really a lot of growth in their knowledge, and also commitment to carrying the work forward after the program. I had 85% of the teachers were still doing their lesson sequences in years after the initial Science Institutes for my county, which was amazing. Yeah, so there's just been really strong evidence that this carries impact over time for people.
Yeah.
And
I think in one of the programs that Andra ran in the beginning, there was 30% of the participants agreed that they felt empowered. And at the end, 90% felt empowered. So that's just a huge, huge improvement.
Yeah.
For the Cali COE fellowship that many of you are in, last year, 100% of the fellows agreed that the program built their capacity to implement environmental literacy. 100%. That's just, that's huge. Obviously, it's everything. It's everyone. So yeah, just this model works and it's really replicable. And so, yeah, that's why we shared it.
And so these reflection questions we can save for when we're opening things up for our breakout rooms, and then the last slide is just our contact information. And
I take a screenshot or a photo.
Yeah, you can capture that, but you all have this deck, so we're available for questions. And as I said, Andra is has put so much into that document that if it's overwhelming to you, you can contact her and she will zero in on the piece that is like what you're looking for. So thank you for being a part of this session, and we're going to continue on and have our breakout groups after the wrap up for this first hour. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to sign off because I have a meeting at 10, but I'm going to put my email address in the chat. Thank you all so much. See you again soon.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie and Amity. That was just so much information and so wonderful to hear. And I know a lot of us are thinking, wow, this is just awesome sauce, but oh my gosh, what are those next steps? And sadly, money kind of comes into play always. So that's why we also know that we have a very diverse audience, which we love in this. And we don't know if everybody knows about the Cal MSCS funding that's out. The goals for the Cal MSCS are here. One is to expand existing statewide infrastructure and capacity to provide educator professional learning opportunities in math, science, and computer science. That's that MSCS, now another acronym to put in our acronym plate, for grades 4 through 12. Really, I mean, as you can read these, there's a lot of it about professional learning opportunities for educators, and then also supporting local efforts to improve family and community engagement around math, science, and computer science. And one of the first steps for a county office is to do an asset mapping of all of the different things that are going on within your county, and to think about what are we doing in professional learning for these different silos, but how can we bring it together to integrate it? And thinking that environmental literacy is really a lovely integration point to start bringing all of these different people to the table to think about professional learning. So not sure if you are the person in your county that is spearheading this or if it's somebody else. So we wanted you to go find out who in your county is actually doing this work, who's doing that asset mapping, how can you be a part of that and help out? There is some substantial money that's associated with it. Every county is getting a base of $300,000, and then the rest is based on ADA. Amy put into the chat the website. So I encourage you to go and take a look at that and seek out the folks within your county office that are doing the work if you are not that person, and to think about how environmental literacy really could be that beautiful integration point. Another thing to think about and to consider is our CTE friends. For us, they're on the other side of the wall. We want to tear down that wall and all work together. But there's a Golden State Pathways program funding And so on Thursday, December 7th, from 9:30 to 11, there will be a Cali webinar on that funding and looking at strategies and resources to build those pathways for climate careers. So that is also another thing to start thinking about and to share with your colleagues, your CTE colleagues, and districts that you know have strong CTE pathways. Last but not least, Cali, in partnership with the Lawrence Hall of Science, is really wanting to think about how we are using environmental literacy and environmental based learning in our TK-12 schools throughout California. I know that we are at county offices, but we all have extensive networks out there for administrators and for teachers. And if you could please share with your networks this survey, it will take about 15 minutes-ish. And yes, as Amity is circling it, and it's a chance to win one of 4 $250 prizes, which, I mean, a prize is always lovely. So if you could please share that survey with your networks, we'd greatly appreciate it. I'm going to put into the chat, or if somebody else beats me to it, a link to our Gotson Needs Jamboard. If you could please take a minute to fill out just what were some of those things that you got from today, what are some of your needs, so we can start to formulate how we want to structure and how we want to disseminate information in our next community of practice. We will have, this is awesome, we're right at 10. We will have a second hour after a break where you'll be able to kind of choose your own adventure with some breakout rooms to actually not be talked at, but to do all of the talking and to process together and to think about how these different things play out within your county and how you too can look at capacity building to scale. So I'm going to be quiet, let you fill out that Jamboard, and then also I would love for you to take a moment to get up and take a break for a second. Please feel free to turn off your camera, go get some water or coffee, go outside for a second, and we will get started back at 10:11 after. Thanks. Welcome back, everyone. I think we are going to pass this over to Julie to kind of talk us through different things.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Hilborn. I'm the Environmental Literacy and Sustainability Coordinator at the San Mateo County Office of Education. And it was so great to listen to those presentation by Stephanie and Amity. So exciting. I have taken over. Sorry, I have taken over for Andra, and so I can answer lots of questions about some of the things that they were talking about. And I hope at the break that you were able to get up. I heard about some research recently that says that for those of us who have these sedentary jobs, getting up and walking for 5 minutes every hour can alleviate most health problems that come from sitting all the time. So that was really eye-opening to me. So I'm not always good about it, but I try now to just get up and walk a little bit, like do a lap around the building. So I'm going to share my screen. And we are now in the part where you all get to, let me do this, there we go. Discuss and apply the new learning, of which there was a lot shared in that last hour. So we know one thing about learning, it's so important to be able to process what we hear and just talk it out and build on it by getting more ideas from people who are hopefully going to be in the breakout rooms. Now we have a relatively small group here, but I think we're still going to go into these breakout rooms because we like to divide them up by Cal MSCS. So the Math Science Computer Science grant, AB 285, which is a new law. Forgive my voice, I'm having a little frog in my throat here. So AB 285 is a new law that just passed in October. It's a California law that mandates that climate change be taught at grades 1 through 12, believe it or not. So all the way through. Now, that doesn't mean that at the elementary grades, we need to be teaching climate change in the same way that we would do that in the upper grades, because that obviously is not appropriate. But, you know, the basis of things that need to be taught in elementary school in an inquiry type way that relate to weather and climate and those sorts of things, that's appropriate. And then the more you know, intense topics of climate change come along a little later in middle school and high school, but it is a mandate. It is now codified into law that climate change has to be taught. So in one breakout room, we will talk about that. And then in the other one is professional learning. So, you know, a lot of those topics that Amity and Stephanie were talking about, if you'd like to go there, you can go there. These are some questions that you can discuss, and we'll put those into the chat before we leave into our breakout rooms. So I don't have to read all of these out loud, but I think we're just, you know, thinking about how everything that we heard applies to our own role and how we can leverage it in the role that we have. Who else is there at your COE that you can also leverage to maybe bring into this work? Do you have extended learning coordinators? Do you have science, social studies, different, you know, topic coordinators? Who else can be brought into the work? And then what's your situation? You know, are you a person who can address the campus part of it? We at the County Office of Ed in San Mateo, we just hired a new director of sustainable facilities and construction, which I am absolutely thrilled about because he's now going to be taking on more of that campus aspect when it comes to facilities. And so, you know, what is your situation at your own COE? And then how might you build capacity for one of your current projects? So without further ado, we're going to be in the breakout rooms for about a half an hour. You can feel free to jump around. You don't have to stay in any one. If you want to go to all three during that half an hour, feel free. I think Amy is making the breakout rooms and she will give you that privilege of being able to select your own breakout room. So let me just stop sharing here for a second. And what questions do you have? Okay. We do